Joining us right now is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson. Of course, he's also the weekend host for Fox and Friends Weekend. Tucker, we want to hear your opinion of this government shutdown. You paid attention to the last government shutdown back in 1995-96. How do you think the Republicans are playing their hand this time around?
Well, I think it's probably been politically bad for Republicans in that Obamacare went online on Tuesday. Disastrous results, and all we're talking about is a shutdown. So, they've hamstrung themselves that way. I would say the most inspiring shutdown story I've seen in a long time come from one of my reporters who went yesterday down along the river in Virginia and Washington and took pictures of all the barriers that have been torn down by citizen joggers who refused to bow to the president's demands that their jogging trails be closed.
I love that.
Well, and to that end, I mean, obviously the big story last weekend had to do with the World War II monument, where they went out of their way and spent money to close down an open-air monument. Your reporter at the Daily Caller, Neil Monroe, has done some great reporting on that. Was that a ham-handed play by the administration?
Yeah, that and trying to close the ocean off Florida, 1,100 square miles of ocean, including parts of Biscayne Bay off Miami. So when the government, isn't fully funded, when it's only 83% funded, that means you don't get to go fishing or running. It's just obviously efforts to hurt citizens, to hurt the public, to convince you that, the worst thing that could happen in your life is the government not to get fully funded.
But, as I look at this thing, Tucker, I keep coming to the conclusion that Republicans are not selling their position very well. One of the things that Republicans are doing is they're following regular order. I mean, they were elected. They are representing the views of the people who put them in office. They are going through the regular process to try to change a law with which they disagree. On the other side of the equation, you have a president who never follows the constitutional rule of law when it comes to obeying law. If he disagrees with it, he simply delays it, or in some cases, in the case of immigration, tells his Department of Justice, we're not even going to enforce it.
That's true. It's an asymmetrical battle. There's no question about it. I mean, on one side, you have a highly disciplined, very sophisticated political operation. On the other side, you have a totally fractured coalition of people who just basically don't agree with each other. That's the Republicans. The Republicans have a decent argument, but they haven't made it very effectively, I would say, and that's about fairness. The Congress passes Obamacare, the Democrats pass Obamacare, and then try to exempt themselves from its worst effects, because if their staff had to abide by Obamacare, it would, quote, cause a brain drain. This is of a piece. I mean, this is like trying to pass gun control when you have armed bodyguards, or trying to push for wind farms when, you just don't want them off your summer house on Nantucket.
Yeah.
This is, laws are good for you but not for me kind of attitude that infuriates people. And I think if Republicans had made that case for the past 3 months in public, they would get somewhere. Instead, you get reports that John Boehner and Harry Reid are secretly negotiating to exempt their staffs from Obamacare. I mean, that's a very basic problem. It's hard to have message discipline when the Speaker of the House is apparently not abiding by it.
Well, Tucker Carlson, you'll get no argument here about the ineffective nature of the Republican message machine. However, none other than the New York Times, their reporter Jeremy Peters pointed out in an article last week that this is different this time around compared to 95 because of what he calls the digital revolution and basically the digital army that he describes. He names a lot of websites, including yours, the Daily Caller, helping to stoke energy on the right that's invigorating the Republican Party's base. How much has the new media and websites and the organization and messaging that comes from the new media helped this cause for the Republicans?
Well, I think it probably helps the country in general to have a little diversity in your news selection, to not be totally reliant on news organizations that are sucking up to the president. So that's in general a good thing. But again, if you can't make out what the message is, if it's not clear, if there are 9 different messages, if the message is muddy, then it's sort of hard to win the argument.
How do you think
is the key here?
How do you think it plays out, Tucker?
Ultimately, I think the Republicans are probably pretty afraid of the debt ceiling. That the two are being conflated, I would say. You've got 10 days left until that needs to be raised or not, and I would imagine that would move them to action. I mean, as much as I don't want it to be this way, I think they're probably going to lose the public debate. So I would say it's hard to imagine this going beyond the next 10 days.
You know, you, Tucker Carlson, are a Renaissance man, really. I mean, not only the editor of the Daily Caller, but, you know, a snappy dresser, an adequate dancer, one hears. And
That's a low blow. Now,
That's a lie, by the way.
Come on.
yeah, but you also spend your weekends doing Fox and Friends at the Fox News Channel, and boy, they've got some big changes taking place today. You were there, I guess. What's the buzz around the place?
Well, I think people are excited. I mean, Megyn Kelly is awesome. I like Megyn Kelly.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Cool. I think the show's going to be good. 9 o'clock. Hannity, who's every bit the decent guy he seems to be in public, he's one of the rare TV people who's actually as decent in person as he seems on TV, maybe even more so. He's at 10, so which means, you know, the guy's, after 17 years, the guy is finally going to have, you know, a more reasonable schedule. I think the show's going to be on tape some of the time. So, I mean, I think he's happy. I think Megyn Kelly's happy. It seems great.
Tucker, you've lived in Washington many years, and this whole controversy over the Washington Redskins team name is popping up again. The president chimed in on it. Just a half hour ago, we had Joe DeGenevieve, of all people, on the air, siding with Obama, and yet we also have Lanny Davis, of all people, saying that the president is wrong about this. And by the way, the president didn't mention anything about his hometown Chicago Blackhawks, the hockey team. Where do you fall down on this?
Clearly a racist name.
Exactly.
Well, you know, as someone named Carlson, I'm very upset about the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, so what's the message here? You know, that Scandinavians are rapists and pillagers? You know, it's exactly the kind of ethnic stereotyping that hurts my people.
Don't get me started on the Fighting Irish.
Well, exactly. Or the Drunken Irish. Are they a team? It should be. But anyway,
Hey.
I'm joining a class action suit against the Minnesota Vikings, hoping for a cash payout like everybody else.
All right, we've made a little
I feel
news
diminished.
here. Well, you're never diminished with us, Tucker. You're always at the top of our list.